commitment, values, service.
Resilient, strong, adaptable,
an all-encompassing, self-sustaining organization that thinks strategically, goal-oriented, process-oriented to achieve strategic goals.
Agile, responsive, unique.
It is something which has taken me through many journeys, many crucibles, many triumphs.
Courage, commitment, honor, integrity, loyalty, and discipline.
Integrity, loyalty, and absolutely discipline.
And of course, loyalty and courage.
And we eat, sleep, and breathe these core values.
Every follicles that make up, this being is all about military.
Jamaica's Defense Force. So that apostrophe S speaks volumes, because Jamaica owns this organization, and the members of the organization have a responsibility to Jamaica, and that's entwined and bound together so that the future of both go hand in hand. Jamaica's Defense Force.
A critical tool for our contribution to national youth engagement and our own long-term goals. Finally, as I proceed to office tomorrow without my training wheels,
it was a milestone. Decades in the making, the appointment of Rear Admiral Antoinette Weems Gorman, the first female Chief of Defense Staff of the Jamaica Defense Force. More importantly, this one act was testimony to an organization that, while firmly rooted in tradition, has kept pace with a changing world. It has remained unfazed amidst political transitions and global turbulence, and steadfast in the face of social upheaval, economic challenges, changing values, always representing excellence, integrity, and the very best of the nation it serves. July 31st, 1962, marked the birth of the JDF, mere days before Jamaica ushered in its independence. The force was the successor to the colonial West India Regiment, which dated back to the late 1700s.
At 3 minutes to midnight, the flag of Jamaica is borne into the arena by runners of the Boys Brigade and received by the Prime Minister, who hands it to a warrant officer of the Jamaica Defense Force. His Excellency the Governor and the Prime Minister take up their positions facing the royal box.
Right! General, salute! Present!
Yet, like much of the trappings of colonial life, the regiment was disbanded and a new force was formed.
For many years, Jamaica had British Army troops in Jamaica. There was always part of a battalion serving in Jamaica, and that battalion served in other parts of the West Indies as well. So becoming independent meant we would be getting rid of those troops. There was no aggression or hostility towards them, but they were here.
The beginnings were modest, with only 2 regular units, the headquarters and support units, and the 1st Battalion Jamaica Regiment, in addition to the Jamaica National Reserve. And even then, The fledgling force was under the command of a British officer, Brigadier Paul Crook.
But in those days, there wasn't a Jamaican lieutenant colonel, a commanding officer. The chief of staff was British, and so on. So we all, as officers anyway, had this feeling that we must grow, we must pass our exams, we must gain the experience from these people who were here and take over gradually. So, I mean, like when David Smith was first appointed a commanding officer, a lieutenant colonel, that was a big step for the local forces, and so on. And he eventually rose to the rank of brigadier.
By the time a native son, Brigadier David Smith, assumed command, the JDF was already evolving into a veritable combined armed force. It now boasted the Jamaica Air Wing, the Jamaica Sea Squadron, and the Force Engineer Unit, which all became subunits of headquarters and support units.
I had never dreamed when I joined that we would have an air wing or a coast guard or an engineer unit or anything else that was bigger than just the regiment. And here it was, this was an opportunity of expanding beyond just an infantry soldier.
This dream was certainly just beginning. Robert Nish would himself continue to rise in the ranks, eventually becoming Major General and the fourth and the longest serving Chief of Staff to command the mushrooming force. In total, 11 men and now 1 woman have steered the course of this defense force, which has assumed its place as arguably the most respected in the region.
Now we have centers of excellence in the JDF, in which a lot of the region and international students come to develop their skills, to be trained. So the JDF is well recognized, and down in the Caribbean, it is the regiment, the army that the international partners look forward to work with: Canada, US, UK. So it's a good thing, and it's a great pride. And as a Jamaican and a veteran of the Jamaican Defense Force, I am proud. I am proud to be a part of it.
The complex organization is now over 7,000 strong and has evolved into a divisional structure with 5 brigades: the Jamaica Regiment, the Maritime Air and Cyber Command, the Support Brigade, the Caribbean Military Academy, and the Jamaica National Reserves. In November 2021, the JDF would complement these new brigades with 5 new regimental and Queen's colors. This historical colors parade was the first time globally that colors were presented to all formations of a military organization at the same time. From Burke Barracks, St. James, to Whitehorn Barracks, St. Mary, and Monaghan, St. Anne, from Manchester to Crossroads, Newcastle to Port Royal, and as far out as the Pedro Keys. The protective shield of the force has extended its reach across the length and breadth of the island. And from whatever branch or location, at whatever rank, those who don its uniform do so with remarkable pride.
The first awesome experience and awesome feel you get, I call it, perhaps it's overwhelming, I believe, is on graduation day. And at that time, you're now putting on a uniform for the first time.
When I put on this uniform, I am supposed to be a 5'2" woman. When I put on this uniform, I'm like 6 feet tall.
And so when you step out there, you expect a certain kind of response from the population moving about in uniform, and generally you get that.
But that sense of pride and neatness and that I'm to set, that example that I'm to set for the person that is looking on. When I step out in the mornings, when I put my uniform on and I clean my boots and put that on in the morning and step out, I know that I am a representation of not just me, but the entire Jamaica Defense Force.
Norman Beckles' enchantment with the military started at age 7, when he spotted a troop of soldiers marching through his rural Westmoreland district.
I was fascinated by their professionalism, which to me at that time, I didn't know it was called professionalism, but based on how they posture and all the rest of it, I decided to follow them.
Struck by the sight of the uniforms, the formation and the sound of their voices raised in song as they marched. Like many a young child before and since, he was instantly captivated.
And I followed them. They were heading to the railway station, the train station, where at that time rail travel was quite prevalent, and I walked to them. So when it was getting late, they told me that I should start heading back home. I was so fascinated that I continued to travel, to walk behind them. Then, you know, Westmoreland is a cane parish, right? A lot of sugar cane is there, so I had to be hiding in the cane or hiding in the bush just for them not to see me, to insist that I turn back.
He would return home only hours later, having trailed them for miles to the railway station.
And when I turned up and I explained to my mom what had happened, you know, obviously I got a proper beating. But I was so fascinated that it didn't matter. That was my first motivation.
On that day, a soldier was born. Norman Beckles would join the army years later at 15, rising to become the JDF's first Force Sergeant Major, the highest appointment of enlisted or junior soldiers. The FSM is a direct link to the Chief of Defense Staff, advising on matters related to the welfare and the development of enlisted personnel. But whether for enlisted soldiers or commissioned officers, the journey for all begins in the same place, the dreaded training ground.
Down! Oh, work together. Down! 2, 3, 4, 5. Down! Up! Down!
Quicken the pace, quicken the pace. So when I enlisted, I was 17 years and 3 months old. It was my first time being away from home, being away from what I know.
Newcastle training, shock and awe. It was a culture change. When I went up there, I was weighing 245 pounds. After my graduation, I was weighing 178 pounds.
I'm 17 years old. I'm a little over 100 pounds if I was so much. And so because it was new to me, I cried for 3 months straight. I mean, I would cry at nights. I would cry before day in the mornings. But when I'm out in training, I would hold a straight face.
You're getting a lot of things coming at you. Persons are shouting you down. You're told to perhaps run all over the place. You're doing hours of just physical activity. And you think to yourself as a recruit that it is barbaric and it's cruel.
So there were many moments during training when I said, you know, I can't take this. I'm not going to make this. I mean, this is something that I thought I could manage, but this is you know, really bigger than me. But you know, you have other guys who would say, listen, we're not leaving you. We're in this together.
So the process is to build you firm, to ensure that when you get down into operational world, especially working with the infantry, you're poised and set to go.
There became a point when you realize that, you know, I can do this. I can manage. And so eventually you just keep going and going until you're seeing now graduation day 2 weeks down the road, and you're saying, yes, I'm almost there. To the point where you pass out and become a soldier and you continue working from day to day.
The trials of the training ground are soon forgotten, given the harsh reality of what may lie ahead. Preparation is key, and thanks to partnerships with entities worldwide, the local military has expanded its capacity to tackle any eventuality that may arise.
And some of our partners have helped us to build the Jamaica Defence Force. And we've done this through a series of MOUs and long-time arrangements, as I'll call them, like in the case of Calypso Hop Red Stripe, where every year, up to the time when I was Chief of Staff of the JDF, we had an exchange with the British Armed Forces, where they would send down a contingent of people to Jamaica. We, in turn, would send up our contingent to the UK.
Which gives us a chance to be exposed to certain facilities that we do not have, certain equipment that we do not have.
They, in turn, would come here and benefit from jungle warfare training in Jamaica, where a lot of training was done, for instance, in places like Sherwood Forest in Portland, which is very, very thick, in almost like a jungle.
Many would be surprised at the number of times that local soldiers have been deployed to assist in operations and in peacekeeping missions.
Mr. Deputy Speaker.
The very day that I took over the Defense Force, we got a message from Trinidad and Tobago that there was a coup taking place.
This afternoon, the government of Trinidad and Tobago was overthrown.
And so you could say that was a baptism of fire for me, because we had to assemble troops, get the military direction from the government, and proceed to Trinidad and Tobago. And so I felt that was a very good contribution that Jamaica made to regional security by helping the Trinidadian Armed Forces to deal with the problem that they were grappling with down there.
The JDF was center stage in restoration efforts following the 1983 U.S. mission to the island of Grenada, on the heels of the murder of Prime Minister Maurice Bishop and key government figures.
Urgent Fury, that's the operational name for the mission to restore democracy in Grenada in 1983. I was on that first contingent. When we got there, there was a lot of fighting going on, especially out at the airport. And we had also to dig in. We didn't go at the battlefront to fight against the enemy, but we were keeping safe the facilities, the oil refinery, the public current electricity company.
Colonel Ken Barnes took about 20 minutes telling me all about Grenada, and I had no clue what this was about. And then eventually said, so, you're going down to take over from Colonel Ormsby? I said, oh, okay, sir. He said, yes, and by the way, Tango 3, which is a JDF King Air aircraft, is laid on to fly you down tomorrow morning, leaving at 7. So I saluted smartly, and I was off to Grenada. And I spent the next 6 months as the commanding officer of the Caribbean Peacekeeping Forces in Grenada.
Local soldiers have even braved and survived the battlefields of some of the world's deadliest wars.
We actually sent JDF officers and our overseas partners, our big partners like Canada, were sufficiently accepting of our officers' abilities as officers, as leaders, to have them command their people in a conflict area. So that's not an easy decision to make for anyone to use other nationals to command your troops.
We've deployed to Afghanistan with Canadian forces. We've deployed to Sierra Leone. Jamaicans wouldn't know that, but whatever forum we stand in, we stand tall, and our presence is always felt.
I joined the Canadians in Canada for pre-deployment training in 2008. And the pre-deployment training was a few months, I can't specifically remember, almost a year. And then we deployed to Afghanistan in 2009.
Officers Eldon Morgan and Carl Clark served on the engineering team of Canadian forces and with civilian contractors to help rebuild vital infrastructure in the country, often at great personal danger.
So we were deployed 6 days a week, which was in itself taxing on the body, but also on the mind as well. Because when you see or witness other persons getting, blown up by IEDs, it really plays on the mind. The RAM ceremony is when they're sending home deceased service members. So they have a RAM ceremony at the airport when they're sending them off. That is when it really hit me that the last time I saw my parents and my family could be the last time I saw my parents and my family. And so it was at that point that I really took it seriously.
Well, we were very proud of them because they came back, they both got medals from Afghanistan, and we were very proud of how positively the Canadians spoke about how they integrated with the troops. They actually led Canadian troops in a combat situation, which you can imagine that the Canadians would have to be confident about the quality of our officers.
On and off the battlefield, the force pulls together specialists in every area of endeavor.
Just about everything you have outside in civil life is encompassed in the military in a sort of one-shop type scenario. You have medical expertise, you have communications expertise, plumbers, mechanics, communication experts, aviation experts, people who are involved in the maritime environment as a naval aspect of things, infanteers who deal with the land-based type matters. And so there's a lot of scope for young people who want to improve themselves or to join the job market, to find something useful and productive to do in service to their country.
The JDF has harnessed these strengths to confront traditional and more modern-day security threats in the country. It continues to be a key partner of the Jamaica Constabulary Force in the battle against drugs, the arms trade, trafficking, and more recently, cybercrime.
As a counter-narcotics operation organization is key to the fight against narcotics, drugs in this country. Not only internally, but also from beyond our shores. As a result of that, the JDF Coast Guard and the air wing of the JDF are deployed very, very often to do long-range maritime surveillance to detect any vessels that may be heading towards Jamaica with counter-narcotics. But not only drugs, because you know that there is the drug for guns arrangement that takes place among criminals. And so we therefore counter both narcotics smuggling and drug smuggling into the country.
Beyond security concerns, the JDF provides a lifeline to the economy and to the people, on land, by air, and at sea. In a country encircled by oceans, maritime safety and law enforcement are a constant concern. Coast Guard sailors carry out regular search and rescue missions, respond to environmental hazards, fisheries protection, and even maritime customs and immigration. The JDF Air Wing offers support from the skies, with routine tasks such as providing air mobility for the force or moving critically ill patients across the island, to doing search and rescue operations and support for civil society organizations.
In the JDF, nothing is impossible. There's also a saying that rain doesn't fall on the JDF. You know, when rain is falling, everybody run out of rain. We say in the JDF, rain doesn't fall in the JDF, rain falls on the JDF. So it is when the problems fall on the JDF, we find the solutions and we make things right.
This broad-based expertise has also equipped the JDF to carry out humanitarian and disaster response efforts across the region. For example, after the 1991 devastation of the Bahamas from Hurricane Andrew.
landing in the Bahamas, going through the airport, and people in the airport, obviously it was chaotic, people in the airport, you know, jump up and down and say, oh, you know, we're rescued, the Jamaica Defense Force is here. And this is another country. And feeling that sort of, it gives you a sense of pride once, but it also inspires you to do the best you can under those circumstances.
The earthquake in 2010, that was my first experience in disaster response. It was also the most emotionally challenging one as well, with all the devastation that was witnessed. After that, I seem to have found myself chasing hurricanes around and disasters around the region. I was appointed the Deputy Director of the Caribbean Disaster Response Unit, an arm of the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency. It's called CDRU. And as a result of being a part of that body, I traveled to several different Caribbean countries to do damage assessments and just to help with their recovery from natural disasters.
Whether to chase hurricanes, lend humanitarian aid, assist in nation building, provide support in conflict, or restore stability, the military has exposed its own to a range of experiences the world over, some more ceremonial in nature.
I remember our first time mounting the guards at Wellington Barracks. The guards would be mounted at Wellington Barracks and then marched over to Buckingham Palace. And I remember the first morning that we went out to mount the guards. We were told that this is a spectacle for tourists and that huge crowds generally gather in front of Buckingham Palace for the mounting of the guard. When we went to Wellington Barracks the morning, there were less than about 200 people milling around Buckingham Palace. But by the time the guard was mounted and we were to march over to Buckingham Palace, we had to have horse guards clearing the path for the guards to march over. There were so many persons that it was unbelievable. I remember specifically there was this Jamaican Rastafarian lady, and she had about 12 flags sticking, 12 Jamaican flags of various sizes sticking all over her hair, her pocket. She just had flags. And she had this huge Jamaican flag on a pole, and she was up and down the streets. She was just, the atmosphere, the pride was just, you could taste it. It was really an exciting time for us as Jamaicans. And as a drum major, I was the first person onto the forecourt of Buckingham Palace, leading the band and drums and the guard onto the forecourt for the change of the guard. That particular day, the band, the Queen herself was out on the balcony watching the guard change. The band master at the time was Major Roy Wade, and the British band played a very popular British tune, and of course the audience cheered. Major Roy Wade decided to draw Bob Marley, One Love, and it was just overwhelming.
Back home, the military band has become a feature of national celebrations and intimate gatherings, displaying a softer side to the force. Major retired Roy Wade, the JDF's former director of music, explains how the band has connected the army to the people.
It was the first band in the whole of Jamaica history that used to go to the various parks and perform for the people who can't afford to hire a band. So it's a public band, it's a people's band, that's what it is known as. And so therefore, when they see them outside to perform in the different parks, it's to satisfy the people.
Yes, in every way, one of the greatest assets of the force is its ability to be in sync with the rhythm of changing times. It was not surprising then when the JDF became only the second national armed force in the world under the command of a woman.
She's a soldier first, or an officer. She's firm on that, and she's just here to serve.
For many, the choice was clear and not a political one based on gender, but a selection based on competence, regardless of gender.
The day she came before me on the interview for her selection as an officer, I spotted her as a winner right away. I spotted her as somebody who was going to exert strong leadership, very focused, and also ensure that there would be gender equity in the Jamaica Defence Force. Lo and behold, she's now the head.
It wasn't a gender norming issue. The gender was, by the way, it was a competence issue, and she was the person.
The first chapter of this story of female achievement opened in 1976, when then Chief of Staff Major General Rudolph Green recruited the force's first women officers. Grace Barkley, Florice Cameron, Janice Copeland, Yola Kane, and Susan Hike.
Was a friend of mine was actually visiting an apartment building where I lived. And he said to me, Sue, and he was in the JDF, by the way. And he says, they're recruiting in the JDF, why don't you think of joining? So I thought about it, and I actually applied. And it was probably a bit of a state of madness as well, because who joins a man's army, you know, and start something like that from scratch?
The first female recruits were sent to England for training at the Women's Royal Army Corps Centre and for officer training at the Women's Army Corps College in Camberley. After that, they began to prepare for the recruitment and training of the first intake of female soldiers in 1977.
We returned in late 1976, and we went right into the process of actually writing the procedures, just getting all the administrative processes done to receive the first cadre of female recruits, other rank recruits, who were due to start in 1977.
In 1979, Lieutenant Yola Kane became the first female pilot in the JDF. She was followed by Lieutenant Joanna Lewin, who received her wings in 1980 in Canada. Retired Major Joanna Lewin was the first rotary wing pilot in Jamaica, the Caribbean, and the Canadian Air Force. Females in the Army are now a commonplace sight, but back then, the atmosphere was somewhat chilly.
I'll be very honest with you. This was a corps of all male counterparts who had never had women in the military before. The reception was very mixed, but in many ways it was hostile to us. And in many ways they were teasing us and pushing us beyond our limits to see how far they could go and what they could achieve. Well, they didn't get very far.
Females who started the JDF Women's Unit, it was followed by the first intake. And they are the women that all the service women today stand on their shoulders, including myself.
Weems Gorman reports that gender optimization is now an integral part of a force that is now 25% female. In her view, a female soldier's rise through the ranks is only constrained by the limitations she may place on herself.
It is extremely rewarding and a true blessing to be able to have lived to see this day in history. Her story. And I'm very, very proud of them. And more proud of the CDS, who has, through her acumen, her intellect, her strength of character, been appointed to the position that she has. It is a fruition of a journey, a very long journey, and a difficult one.
So as I hand over to Admiral Weems Gorman today, and proceed on terminal leave, it will be my privilege, Admiral, to serve under your command for the next month.
My most memorable moment is handing over this Jamaica Defence Force to a most capable officer in the form of Rear Admiral Antoinette Weems Gorman. So by the Defence Board selecting her to be my successor, it has ensured that we will stay on the path towards the long-term goals that will help the force, transform the force, change the culture of violence in Jamaica, influence the region, and impact the world.
As the force increased in sophistication, it soon became apparent to those at the top that being the best in the world required a focus on academic preparation as much as military training.
I'm quite happy about one particular policy, that is the Jamaica Defence Force education policy, which saw to the education of persons within the force, bringing them up to a particular standard so that we could compete generally across the nation.
I thought that JDF persons, especially the officers and the senior ranks, should be involved in education. And so I told my officers that by the time they reach the rank of major, every officer should have at least a first degree. And the senior ranks should also be highly qualified.
So education and continued professional development of our soldiers is very important.
This was the inspiration behind the launch of the Caribbean Military Academy during the administration of Lieutenant General Rocky Meade. Meade himself holds the distinction of being the first JDF officer to be awarded a PhD.
And in our infancy, in the early days of the JDF, we would rely on our larger partners for just about every training opportunity except for the most basic training that we do in Newcastle. What we thought we would do is repatriate training to Jamaica, deliver all the skill sets we need, and now we're doing training from the basic technical level all the way to graduate, postgraduate programs.
In line with this, the JDF launched its initial officer training program, providing basic military officer training to officer cadets and their equivalents from law enforcement and uniformed services, preparing officer cadets to function effectively at a level demanded of a military officer on first appointment.
It's not a type of academic organization that we've had in Jamaica before or even internationally, because we are just supposing what we do against civilian qualifications. So we are ensuring that what we deliver at the CMA is accredited, and we're going through that process now.
So what we have now is a first time for the region, a Caribbean Military Academy that, while focused primarily on security and defense issues, is a genuine tertiary institution that's going through all the stages for accreditation with the University Council and all that. And this training is available to other entities, not just within the region, but beyond.
As an organization that has shaped the lives of many youth, the JDF is now focused on extending this influence beyond its ranks through the Jamaica National Service Corps.
But I think one of the main things that we offer to Jamaica is an institution that is capable and stands for certain standards that we really need to continue to build out and reflect in the wider society. And one of our main contributions now is our focus on youth development.
I joined the Jamaica National Service Corps because I like the Army and I wanted the second chance in life that was given.
The Jamaica National Service Corps is a program that incorporates young persons. What it does, it gives them some military training, but not only military training, it also teaches them a skill.
You can use the skill and the knowledge that you gain in the Jamaica National Service Corps program and use it out there in the civilian world.
So at the end of the period of training, then they will be military equipped and at the same time they will be able to earn a livelihood from the skill that they would have learned while they were here.
Let's say, for example, in society with crime and violence, in addition to the current situation where we support the JCF in immediate things to try to cauterize the situation, we have a long-term approach that you will have to change the culture and minds of the future generation.
So I want to encourage the youths to come and join the JNSC program to improve their lives and make themselves a better person.
I would encourage as many persons as possible, youngsters as possible, to try and get into the program so that at the end of the day, they will understand what it means to be on time, what it means to be honest, what it means to be committed, what it means to be able to demonstrate a level of integrity that will be accepted by society.
So I want to say thanks to the JDF for improving my life and helping me become a better person.
We look around and we see the products of the JDF. Look at them walking around, giving service to Jamaica. Great citizens. And it's because they went through this training. I feel that Jamaica, at our stage of development now, needs to have a look at this. And that service need not necessarily be military, but there should be some aspects of structured training in it so that people can understand that discipline is critical for your own development.
The military has many unique features, apart from its war fighting that everybody seems to know about. I think it's the only area of employment where responsibility is thrust upon a young leader at a very tender age. But the military doesn't just leave you to fend for yourself. It prepares you by training you and giving you the requisite training and skills that it requires to extract from you, the leadership. And it's the whole teamwork. It is what the military stands for. It is all those things combined that makes it the military unique.
At the other end of the spectrum are the many who have served faithfully and must now retreat into retirement. Some find it particularly challenging to transition from the structure of the military to the demands of civilian life. This has become a growing concern.
And so we have taken a longer term approach to the care of veterans, starting from whilst they're in the service and transitioning, ensuring that we deliberately prepare them for life after JDF.
We process pensions, gratuities, we do medical care, we give out packages to those who are in need. We try to find soldiers who have challenges and to point them in the right direction where they want to go.
Well, the Jamaica Defence Force has always recognized that we are a family, and you don't abandon family members when they are unable to pull the load they used to pull. You have mechanisms for taking care of family.
And so it is important to recognize and ensure that the care of those persons who have served their country is in good order, and that's what the Department of Veterans Affairs is established to do.
As the Army faces its own milestone, it must find ways to renew itself to remain relevant and contemporary in its outlook.
I think the JDF has continued to look at ourselves. We do our own introspection, and the way we do that is a process we call the Strategic Defense Review. And through that process, we look at where we're at, we look at the threats, we assess the needs, what the force needs to be capable of doing, and then outline or lay out a plan to do that.
Yet, even with their sights set fixedly on the future, tradition is the glue that helps keep the troops together. In a country where reverence, honor, and respect are often paid scant regard, the Army holds firm to symbols and pageantry, such as the ceremonial trooping of the color.
And military organizations worldwide continue to maintain traditions, to remind ourselves of where we're coming from, and to rally the troops around something that we can all understand and be called to as a grouping. Perhaps if we were paying attention to or rallying around our traditions of family and values, we would have a much better society today.
60 years later, few can deny it has far exceeded its mission to provide military capability to deter and/or defeat threats against the Jamaican state and its interests. This one organization is much more than the sum of its component parts.
But imagine an organization that can provide to the citizens that we serve a range of capability, and not just along the lines of internal security, which is where the Jamaican citizen likely sees a soldier all the time on the road in support of the JCF. That is just one of 10 main articulated roles that we have as a force.
The Jamaica Defense Force is the only organization in Jamaica that can fill any role, any emergency, you can get into it and get it done.
Basically, the JDF has proven that it's been able to respond to every imaginable incident with professionalism, commitment, and loyalty to the government of the day. And this is very important, that the JDF knows its position. And I believe that's what makes it an invaluable force.
The JDF is an insurance policy, but when you say that, we almost undersell what the JDF is. And what I mean by that, typically an insurance policy is something you set aside for that day when you have a huge problem and you need to call on it. The JDF is more phenomenal than an insurance policy. The JDF is an organization that gives and gives in many ways every single day, and it is the only organization the citizens can call upon if any eventuality should occur. So it's more than an insurance policy. You are getting day-to-day value, and if something you didn't expect happen, who are you going to call? The Jamaica Defense Force.
When the country was polled, the Jamaica Defense Force came out on top of the most trusted entity in Jamaica. It is that fact that the force must always keep foremost in their minds and never lose the trust of the public.
This is the organization that I believe sits as the beacon for the country. When all else is in darkness, the JDF is going to be that organization, that light that is on the hill that everybody can look to.
Who do we call when there's a major emergency, a national disaster? They call the JDF. Who do we call to support the police force? They call the JDF, right? When there are community issues and community projects of a holistic kind, who's out there? The JDF. What can I tell you? It's an awesome organization.
60 years is a significant milestone, and I think the members of the JDF, past and present, can be proud of what we have delivered to the country, and the country can look forward to well beyond 60 more years of sterling service from persons who put themselves out here and put themselves on the line for the remainder of us.
You know, I cannot imagine me and that part of this part of my life not being there. You said that the JDF is in my DNA? Yes. I am a soldier, and even after I've retired, I will forever be a soldier. Thanks to the JDF.